The New York Times has long been referred to as the newspaper of record. It has won 117 Pulitzer Prizes, more than any other organization, and that certainly attests to the talent of the journalists. We are very honored to have one of those journalists with us today. We have the former New York Times senior writer, Geraldine Fabrikant. Geraldine, we are so honored to have you here today.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for asking me.
You have the job I always wanted. What's it like to be at the New York Times? How was it that you started there?
Well, I had been at Variety, which is the trade paper for the entertainment business, and then at Business Week, and I got hired by the New York Times. And the first day I got there, I was so nervous that I went into the lobby where they had payphones, and in whispering, I called my father and I said, "Oh, this is the New York Times, I can't possibly do this." And he said, "Darling, go upstairs and look around. There are 300 reporters. They're not geniuses, they just work like dogs."
And you could do that. All about the perspective.
Well, okay, how has it changed since that day that you started?
Well, you know, there weren't many women then, and now, as you all probably know, the first woman executive editor, Jill Abramson, took over. She didn't last that long, but it was a big moment for women to see that a woman had been appointed head of the Times.
Yeah, that is big.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really big.
The Fox issue. What in the world is going on at Fox?
Well, less now than was before.
Good answer. Is that culture common? Like, we're starting to hear that that may be more representative of what's really happening in the media.
You know, I don't really know. It certainly wasn't the case at the Times in general. I mean, I haven't heard issues, even so much whispers of that, because it was really frowned on. I was pretty shocked by the degree of it at Fox, but we did know it was a very strange culture.
Well, you know, when you talk about the culture, what is it like to be in that building? Because a lot of the biggest investigative pieces come out of that paper, a lot of the biggest everything in the news. That is the point most people go to.
For big I have to say, myself, when I met some of the reporters when I was there first, I was so starstruck, I could barely speak. I mean, it's like, really? It's very impressive. You kind of feel that it's a mission and you're part of it. It's a wonderful place to work.
Oh, wow.
Well, and we like to believe that there is some place you can go where you can trust what you read. We hear so many lies floating around, you don't know what to believe, but surely at the New York Times, they are checking their facts a lot?
Well, what you realize at the Times, and it's very interesting, is that if you're going to take on a big institution, a government or a corporation, you really need a big support team. You need lawyers who can lawyer everything, who can make sure before stories go in that nothing you're saying you can be sued for. And a lot of institutions just simply can't afford it, or they don't want to do it. That's the problem. It's great that there's all these stories broken on the web and whatever, but anything really major, if you don't have a law team, behind you, you can't do it.
Wow.
So that gives you a great deal of confidence because stories are edited for weeks and months. I mean, the story the Times just did on Trump's taxes, for example, the guy who wrote that story has won one of the team that wrote it has had 3 Pulitzer Prizes.
Wow.
And there were 2 or 3 lawyers, I'm sure, going over every word.
What kind of pressure is there as a reporter? You know, we deal with the daily deadline pressure, but at the Times it almost seems like the pressure to be at that level. What did you feel?
No, not, because there are 2 kinds of reporting. There's daily reporting, then there's feature reporting, then there's investigative reporting. So it depends where you're working and what suits your temperament. You know, there are people who churn out stories every day. There were periods when I did that. That's the daily pressure. Then there's taking on big institutions. That's a different kind of pressure. It really depends on your personality, what suits you.
But even then, when you're doing like the daily turn, it still seems as if the depth of the stories go deeper than other organizations.
Thank you. That's great.
Do you have more than one person working on them?
More and more, I've noticed that there are 2 bylines. If you look at every paper, the Journal, the Times, there are 2 bylines because it has to get out so fast because you are competing against the web that it didn't used to be that way. 15 years ago, you wouldn't see double bylines very often. Now you see them all the time, for better or worse, and you can argue both ways.
Yeah, well, it's just good to know somebody is checking the facts. What about the gender gap? Now, you made it as a woman. Congratulations. Is it a little easier today?
I think it is easier today. I mean, women, women have the wind at their backs. Corporations are worried. You know, if there's discrimination, you can turn to lawyers. There's a history of lawsuits. Nothing illustrates that better than what's going on at Fox with these sexual harassment suits. I was shocked by the degree of it. But so many women have stepped up. That tells you that if another company has these issues, women can say, look what happened at Fox. So you have really a lot more, I think, power to address these issues than we had before.
Did you ever face any situations when you first got there in the Times?
Well, I'd like to tell you 30 guys harassed me, but didn't happen.
Oh, there's still time.
With all these men.
We can make it happen.
Anything could happen. Money. What about money?
Yeah, that
are
part.
women getting an equal shake on that now?
I doubt it. I mean, I think it's better, and I really thought about this. I think in industries that don't pay well, such as journalism, you know, women have a better shot. Where guys hold onto the money tighter is at the higher echelons of finance. You don't see so many women running J.P. Morgan or Chase. I mean, they're moving up, but the big changes have been in lower paid fields in general.
Yeah.
But there are changes. Obviously, the corporate world, there are more women CEOs, you know, but still, it's a fight.
Oh, I can't wait to hear you speak. This is going to be so interesting. You are on a panel. It's the Boys and Girls Club. ABC7 is very proud to be a sponsor of Women in a Changing World. Haley Wilkes is going to be the MC of that, and Geraldine is going to be on the panel. You can get more information by going to BGC, that's Boys and Girls Club, at -sarasota.net.